First of all, my name is Steve Garlington. I'm with the DuPage Regional Office of Education out of Wheaton. It's a pleasure to be here. I was here yesterday, sat in on some sessions, very informative. Saw many of you, although you didn't see me, and it seemed like you guys are having a really good time. So again, I want to thank you for having me here at this conference. In your handout, you're going to look at a document that has findings. We're going to talk about that a little bit later from the book Voices, which I co-authored with Dr. Lourdes Ferrer. And then there's a handout that has recommendations. These are in the book, Voices book. And then there's a evaluation. I'd appreciate just 4 questions. If you could fill that out. And just at the end of the session, just pass it to the end of the row. I'll pick those up. I appreciate your feedback. Also, I want to mention that this session is being filmed. So I hope no one here is on the lam. Okay. And if you are, we'll try to direct the camera away from you. So this morning we're going to talk about the book. I'm going to take you through and talk a bit about the book, Voices, Afro-American and Latino Students' Perceptions Regarding the Academic Achievement Gap. First I'm going to ask you to stand up real quickly, just for a second. Stand up real quickly, just for a second. All right, okay, and you may sit down. Thank you so much. So much. The reason I asked you to do that, there's a lot of folks that know that I'm here today, I'm presenting. And when I get back, they're going to ask me, well, Steve, how did it go? How did it go? And I'm going to be able to tell the truth by saying, man, I had them on their feet. So you were on your feet, and so I'll be able to tell that story. Thank you for your cooperation and collaboration. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, the book was written for the DuPage Regional Office of Education. Dr. Darlene Rossetti is the superintendent of schools there and is my boss. The purpose of the presentation is to explore aspects related to the persistent academic achievement gap that exists between Asian and white students and their Hispanic and Afro-American peers. And we are going to get this information primarily from the perspective of Afro-American and Latino students. Those are the students that we interviewed over 3 years with no idea that we were going to do a book. So the book was an afterthought. But based on what the kids told us, we thought it was some rich information. It was very subjective based on their observations, their thoughts and feelings, and we thought it would be a great idea to put it in a book. We've done that. The book is available on Amazon.com. I do have a few books back there that I'm going to give away this morning for those who would like for me to sign them. I'm not a celebrity per se, but I certainly would appreciate signing your book if you so desire. So we're going to learn about the reasons behind the academic achievement gap from the student's perspective. Hopefully we can build consensus regarding steps that we can implement to close the academic achievement gap. How many folks here know what I'm referring to when I say the academic achievement gap? Because we're going to learn about that this morning. How many folks? Okay, about half of you. Okay. So some of this information will be something that many of you are aware of. Some of you may be the first time, but we're going to learn together this morning. So objectives, we're going to read and interpret and analyze academic achievement gap information. We're going to explore strategies that can increase academic achievement of Afro-American and Hispanic students. And you'll see in just a moment why I'm focusing on those particular groups of students. You'll see that in just a moment. That'll become clearer. And hopefully we can have or embrace a courageous conversation. Let me also make a disclosure first this morning. And I hope everyone's comfortable. But just to get clear, I am Steve Garlington. I mentioned that to you. You've read my bio. And I am an Afro-American, and I've been an Afro-American all my life. Wow. Now, that might be surprising to some, but I just want to get that out the way. And so I hope as we talk about this phenomenon, you'll have some input that can maybe help those of us who are in education working with the students to see if we can do a better job of closing the very stubborn and persistent academic achievement gap. Okay, Afro-Americans and Hispanic students continue to lag behind their white and Asian peers as measured by the state's accountability test. Now, for those of you who are in the education system, I know you're saying, well, we don't do the ISAT and the PSAE anymore. I understand that. We use the PARCC now. But for the sake of this session, I'm going to use this historical data to make the point and talk more about, from this reference, the academic achievement gap. And so it's a moral imperative that we address the academic achievement gap because the sheer numbers alone, talking about Afro-American and Latino students in particular, these two student populations will greatly influence the future of our nation. And so that's why it's important that No Child Left Behind, that we certainly look at the numbers and see what it is that's driving those numbers and what we can do to close the academic achievement gap. Okay, sorry, the same thing. So what we're going to take a look at, since this is a state conference, I took data from the state of Illinois, and some of this data might surprise you. I hope it will move you to think more deeply about this particular problem that we're going to address this morning. Okay, when you look at the demographics from 2014, which is not that long ago, state of Illinois, you see that 49.9% of the students were white, 24.6% were Hispanic, 17.5% were Afro-American or black. One of the things to note is that the Hispanic population is the fastest growing population, and so as we move through, we're going to find that that 24 is going to move up quicker than any of the other two groups. These four groups are the groups that were measured on the ISAT, and that's a test that's taken from third grade through 8th grade, the ISAT, no longer used, but that was the group of students. And then in 11th grade, the PSAE was given. All states under No Child Left Behind have some kind of accountability test. For instance, in Florida, they use the FCAT. But you might be interested to know there are 25 states in the United States where if a student does not pass that test, they cannot graduate. Illinois is not one of them. In Illinois, as long as you take the test, regardless of the outcome, you can graduate. Whether it's right or wrong, I'll leave that up to you. But certainly there are 25 states that won't allow those students, if they don't show proficiency, they cannot graduate and get the diploma. Now when we look at the data for Illinois in reading, the bottom line is the Afro-Americans. I think you see, I believe it's 36%. And then on top of that number, the yellow line is the Hispanics. They do slightly better. And if you notice, starting from the 3rd grade, going all the way over to the 11th grade, it's a different test. Now, the 11th grade is the PSAE. But you notice that there's a gap between the Afro-Americans and Latinos, not that much, but the Latinos outperform the Afro-Americans from 3rd grade all the way to 11th grade. But the gap is that distance between those two lines and the top lines, which is the white students and then the Asian students are at the very top. And what you're looking at right there in that percentage is the percentage of students, and I'm looking at the PSAE, I'm looking at 11th grade to make the point. That's the percentage of students who are proficient in reading. So as we all know, if you have 36, and I believe that's the figure, 36% of the Afro-Americans in the state of Illinois took the test were proficient in reading. That means that what percent were not? Anybody? Quick math. What percent were not proficient in Illinois for 2014?
64.
Thank you. 64%. Now, I don't know about you, but that's an awful lot of students that's walking across the stage, and you have parents in the audience talking about, go Junebug, go! Go Junebug, that's my son, that's my boy. Yes, it is your son, yes, it is your boy, but 6 out of 10 of students who go on to graduate are not proficient in reading. That's not a good statistic, especially because reading is so important, okay? And like Latino students, it's a little bit better, but still roughly 6 out of 10 are not proficient in reading. And the reason I say they graduate, because they're in 11th grade. More than likely they're going to go on to finish high school. But even when they finish high school, are they equipped to compete in the global economy? And although we have PARCC now, which is a new test to assess career and college readiness, let me ask you this question. And this test just started coming out last year. They did some pilots before that. But if you have 6 in 10 students not proficient in reading and math, and Afro-Americans and Latinos, and you come up with a new test called PARCC, You see where I'm going with that? I mean, are they going to be any more career ready or for college just because we have a different test? So if someone can help me understand that before the day is out, because I don't get it. And I'm not trying to be politically correct up here this evening, because it's a very important phenomenon that we're talking about. So I'm going to be not like Donald Trump. That's probably not a good thing to say. But I'm not going to be politically correct, because this is too important for me to be cute. Okay, you with me on that? Okay. So let's go to math. Now in math, we see a similar trend, where the African-American student at the bottom, if you look at the last one all the way across, that's PSAE, your Hispanics do somewhat better than you have your white students and your Asian students. But you had that tremendous gap, okay, between the Afro-American Latino students and their white and Asian peers. And if you had a subgroup large enough of the Indian students, if they were a large enough subgroup, you need 20 to make a subgroup, then based on my information, the Indians would be even higher performers than the Asians, but they're not a large enough subgroup, so it doesn't show. So what we're concerned about this morning is the academic achievement gap, and that's what we were asking the kids to help us understand in the book Voices, in terms of what was driving it, what are the underlying reasons, and of course, what are some recommendations. Going back to the book, there are 25 findings in the book. Those findings were based on what the students said. And then there's 27 recommendations. In your handout, I took the liberty to give you that information already in your handout. So those findings are directly from the book, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, Dr. James Comas is an Afro-American professor at Yale, and he makes an important point. And he says there's no significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. And I think that is so important, and many of you, I think, will agree with me. And so the question becomes, when we are in our schools, and the kids said this, and especially Afro-American Latino kids, if they don't have teachers and counselors and administrators who look like them, or who better yet understand their culture, then it's a bit of a challenge to have a significant, authentic relationship with those students if you don't know more about who they are and how they see the world and themselves in it. And so that's why I think it's very important for us to look at how important developing authentic relationships are with our Afro-American Latino students, because that does have a significant impact on outcomes. And so we have work to do, at least in my community in DuPage County, because there's such a disparity in terms of representation. And of course now with the SB 100, where they are talking about not suspending and expelling students nowhere near at the rate which was also disproportionate. And when you look at Afro-American students, what the deans are working on in many of the school districts now is ensuring that staff have better relationships with students so they can get better results in terms of behavior, and so we don't have the incidence of expulsions and suspensions, out of school suspensions. So that's going to be a real challenge. Okay. Excuse me?
Restorative justice.
Yes, restorative justice. That's another part of that whole thing, restorative justice. Thank you. So why Voices? Despite the rich resources, there's a lot of books out there with folks with PhDs and master's degrees talking about the academic achievement gap and cultural competent curriculum and differentiation. You have Marzano, you have a lot of folks out there talking, but we wanted to hear from the kids. We wanted to hear from the kids' perspective, and so that's why Voices. That's why we did the book. After all, it's the students who take the test. It's the students whose future are at risk. So why did we decide to do our research? And in doing our research, we asked kids these two questions. And again, this was before the book. Like I said earlier, the book was an afterthought. After 3 years of going to various high schools, talking to thousands of young people in focus groups, and then we'd have them answer these questions. The first question we asked them was, why are Afro-American and Hispanic students' performances on the reading and math portions of the PSAE lower than their white and Asian peers? That's the question we asked them. And then we had focus groups where they would express themselves. And then once we had the focus group, then they would go to the computers and they would actually write down their responses so we could capture those. And the groups that we work with were the groups of the higher performing Afro-American and Latino students. And the reason was because we wanted them to be able to significantly articulate their responses in writing. And so what you're going to see here, if you get a chance, these are just some of the quotes from the kids that we talked about. And I think you'll find the quotes very interesting. And the second question we asked them is, what do you think schools could do to help more African-American and Hispanic students improve their performance in school on the PSAE? And then, of course, that's where we got many of our recommendations. Some of them we got from our own research. But those are the two questions that we asked the kids starting out. And this is primarily kids from DuPage County. We did go to other states like Florida and went to, I remember doing some studies in Florida, but that's not included in this work, nor is it included in the book, but we did expand that. Okay, what did we learn? African-American and Hispanic students' perceptions regarding their peers' lack of academic achievement were in many cases distinctly different. You had Afro-Americans and Latinos who are different as far as their cultures. In your handout, you'll see that what we did is divide the findings into three categories. And there's another slide, I'm going to bring that up, because they're different, but we wanted you to be able to discern which groups of students said what. So what did we learn? Many of the reasons for their peers' low academic performance were associated with home and community circumstances rather than school. Now, we thought that was very interesting because, you know, we have a sense that students are quick, and parents too, to do the blame game. The reason my kid didn't do good is because the school is not well equipped. The teachers don't care. There's racism and bigotry in the schools. There's a tendency many times to externalize blame. But when we talk to our kids and we ask them those questions, it was interesting that in their responses, they primarily had responses that dealt with home and home and community, basically around the cultural aspects. And I think that was very interesting because it speaks to accountability in terms of closing the academic achievement gap, because much of the work has to be done in the home, much of the work has to be done in terms of the various cultures that those kids come up in. Much of the work has to be done, and we'll talk about that in my next session, with regard to the mindset that drives kids to take low courses in terms of academic rigor, rather than being in AP classes and taking courses that's going to help them to qualify for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math courses. So a lot of the work really, from what the students were saying, has to do with parents and students and communities and churches, and not just so much that the teachers aren't doing their jobs or the schools don't care. And I think that's very interesting, and I think it's an honest response. Students attribute many of their same race, ethnic student academic failures to personal and cultural factors. We're going to talk quite a bit about that in my next session. One of the things I'll mention in terms of cultural factors is this, and many of you may have come across this. The question is, why is it that Afro-American students and Hispanic students who do well in school, who speak standard English like I'm trying to speak this morning, I didn't say what's up yet, but I will. I didn't say we're finna, you know, like we're finna go home or we're finna go around the corner. I didn't say that. But it's fixing to. How many people know what fixing to means? Oh, okay. Well, I'm not fitting to talk this way to you this morning because I want to make the point. And the point is, from a cultural aspect, why is it that those kids who are in AP classes, Afro-American Latinos, who do embrace academic rigor, who do from their home speak standard English, because that's what's spoken in college, that's what's spoken in the boardroom, okay? Not that there's anything wrong with Ebonics, but Ebonics is not spoken in the boardroom and in most jobs. So why is it that those that do speak that way, why is it that they're called by their peers, or they're called out, many of them say, well, you're talking white or you're acting white. You familiar with that? So that's a cultural issue. That's not an issue that the school has brought on, but it's something that needs to be addressed at home and in the communities, but that is a problem. Because hopefully I'm talking like Steve Garlington this morning. I hope you're not thinking I'm talking white, because I already told you I wasn't white, okay? Unless you didn't believe me. And some of you might not, and that's okay too. All right. So what do the students think? Now in your handout, I'm not going to go over every finding. Like I said, there were 25 findings, but I'm going to just highlight some of them as we go through, and these are in the book. In fact, the book is here. Okay? This is the book, and I'm going to give a few of these out towards the end. And in the back of the book, there's 25 findings, and the findings are, again, based on what the kids said. So when we tallied up their responses, we saw trends, and those became the findings. And then there's 27 recommendations for schools, parents, and some students about what can be done to close the academic achievement gap. All righty? Okay, so finding number 2, and this is not in any particular order. Students lack the knowledge and skills to succeed. Students lack the reading comprehension and mathematics skills needed to, 1, enroll in courses, getting back to STEM again, such as chemistry, pre-calc, physics, etc., that would better prepare them for secondary education. So what many students do when they leave high school is they go into college, they don't quite qualify, so they pay money called tuition to take remedial courses, and then after maybe 2 semesters, they don't do well there and they drop out. Especially if they go like to a COD, community college. So that's money wasted. That's dreams deferred, if you will, all because they were really never ready in the first place. Also to pass the PSAE, which we don't have to worry about that now because we're not taking that. Their reading and mathematical abilities were not to the level necessary to answer the test items correctly within the allotted time frame. Okay? So that was one of the findings. Another finding was students do not value a quality education. Students believe that too many of their same race, ethnic peers simply do not see the value of education. Again, in my next presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in terms of mindset. And actually, how many folks are coming to the next one? Okay, fine. So I won't talk too much about that, but we will get more, we will drill down a little bit more in terms of that. They have not internalized the connection between their performance in school and their future quality of life. A lot of students are looking for immediate gratification, AKA $300 Nikes, rather than getting a scientific calculator, those kind of things. And there's a reason why that is in evidence. Unfortunately, there's a reason why too many of our students just go to school because it's the law, but they don't see it as a roadmap. And their parents, many of them, don't see it as a roadmap. And that's a cultural thing, I think. Not to mention, however, when I was in high school, which wasn't all that long ago, I went to college, but my counselor, well, it was long enough, it was long enough. My counselor never spoke to me, ever, about college, or what college are you going to, or what do you think, where do you think your aptitude is? I just went and picked one, and I wanted to hear my name on the, the announcement, Mr. Garlison's going to Yale. I didn't go to Yale. But I did sleep in the Holiday Inn last night. Okay. Did anybody not get that? Oh, thank you. Thank you for your validation. A lack of faith correlates with past failures, overrepresentation in non-rigorous academic subjects, otherwise known as tracking, home ec, shop, business math, as opposed to biology, American Lit, Trig, Calc, okay. And parents, a lot of them don't know. They're just so glad their kids are in school and not out in the street with those hoodlums that they don't even know that they're on a track that's not going to lead them to it, and they are capable of doing so. Gets back to mindset. Finding number 7, students exhibit behaviors that are not conducive to academic success. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why you have Afro-Americans disproportionately expelled and suspended from school. Now, I am not standing here before you today saying that in America, although we've come a long ways, yes we have. We have an Afro-American president that could not have been president with just the black vote. So we've come a long ways, we all know that. But there's still some issues, some vestiges that contribute to the disproportionate number of Afro-Americans who are suspended and expelled from school. But I am not going to even begin to say that that's the primary reason, because I don't believe it. I think that when you have a situation where kids exhibit behaviors that are not conducive to academic success, I believe it starts at home. I believe it starts in the community, in the churches, So I'll leave it right there. But I just wanted to give you my opinion. And you don't have to agree with me. You can raise your hand and fire back if you want to. But I want to be honest because, again, when you see the numbers, it's like I have a graph, and I don't think it's with this presentation, that shows in Chicago only 41 or 46% of the students are Afro-Americans in Chicago, only 46%. But they represent something like 69% of the suspensions out of school. And I don't believe, when you look at that, I think a lot of that has to do with behaviors that's not conducive to academic success, like being on time for school can get you suspended. But that's something that a lot of us, with that CP time, y'all know what I'm talking about. CP time is colored people's time, and what that means is time don't matter. And of course time matters. Okay, of course time matters. So if you don't, but then again, if you think time matters, then you might be acting white. She gets back to that. Just keeping it real with you. So that's something that we need to work on from a cultural standpoint, I believe, but it's still disproportionate and it still needs to be corrected. Students already feel successful. Some Hispanic students express that many of their same ethnic peers, especially those who have recently arrived in the United States, feel a sense of success based on meeting basic goals. They live in the United States, they speak English, and they hold part-time jobs, and they earn more money than their parents did in their native countries. They also graduated from high school, making them the first in their families to accomplish this. So from the Latino standpoint, kids feel already successful. I don't need to finish school. I don't need to take the test. I don't need to do well. I'm already making more than my parents. I'm already more acculturated than my parents. And in many cases, you have role reversal because the parents don't speak English. So that's a whole different dynamic. But that's what the Hispanic students talked about in terms of why those kids didn't do well on the test, is because they don't see the test as important, or school. Students fear rejection from their races, getting back to the acting white. And so students who behave according to the mainstream behavioral norms risk being ostracized, put down, and socially isolated by their same ethnic race peers. Doing homework, studying for classroom tests, participating in class, etc., are often interpreted as acting white, or in Spanish as acting güero. Students are forced to decide if they want to be accepted by their homies or be put down. And that's a real dilemma. It's unfortunate, and it's something that we need to work on. But again, that will deter many students from doing well because they want to belong, especially in school. That's a very important time where you want to be along, you want to be accepted, and you don't want to be made to feel different. But there's been some research at several high schools in DuPage County with higher performing African Americans, Latinos, and they were asked, well, what's that experience like? And many of them said it's really a challenge, to feel that you have to be put down because you're in AP classes, or you have to be put down because you talk standard English. And then many of them fear what's called stereotype confirmation. What is stereotype confirmation? Well, stereotype confirmation is something like this. You say, well, Steve, you got potential. Why don't you go in this AP Calc class? I think you can do great, and maybe I could. But my homies, they're looking at me like, huh? So when I go in there, let's say it doesn't pan out for me. Let's say I just can't get it. So now I'm back with them in math class. So the fear of stereotype confirmation is you had no business there in the first place. Look what happened to you. So rather than face the possibility of failing and getting more criticism, you just don't even take the chance. So many times, if you have your African Americans or Latino students and you're trying to get them to move in that direction, you might want to examine the other motive, the underlying motive, which might be fear of stereotype confirmation, because you make them right in terms of what they thought about you in the first place. Doing good on time. Students live in home environments that are not conducive to academic success. Students live in home environments characterized by limited financial resources. You have your free and reduced lunch. And of course, that's another category. It was on the PSAE and the ISAT. There was a white, black, Hispanic, Asian, and then you had free or reduced lunch. You had ED, economically disadvantaged. That was another category that was measured. okay? So students live in those homes, overcrowded, constant distractions, crime, drive-bys, especially in Chicago on that south side. You know, kids getting ready to go to school, bullet comes through the window, kills them. You know, and that's traumatic. Their parents live in survival mode, just trying to make ends meet. So that's certainly going to impact academic success. You know, if you need a scientific calculator, it costs about $60. You may not can afford to get it. These home circumstances did not provide students with structure, discipline, getting back to that discipline, getting back to the disproportionate expulsions and out-of-school suspensions, discipline in the home. Of course, it took a village to raise a child. You can't say nothing to nobody's child these days. You know, back in the day, you know, you catch it at school and you catch it at home. And anybody could straighten your little behind out. Not anymore. You know, we got a very litigious society. Now everybody wants to sue. And of course, not my kid. Right. Okay. Parents have low academic expectations, and that's a big one. Parents have low academic expectations. And that word high over there, that meant that that's high intensity, and I didn't put that on the other slides, but that meant that an awful lot of students felt that way. Parents have low academic expectations, especially if you're poor. Because if you're poor, you got a job, you're probably a single parent, and the last thing you want to do is have to take off from work to come to the school to re-enroll your son. So you're happy when your son is in school. If he makes D's and C's, at least he passes, and at least I can continue to work and provide a shelter such as it is. So low expectations. According to these students, their parents are content if the children simply attend school, pass their courses, and graduate. At least Pookie got his high school diploma, although Pookie can't read a lick, much. Teachers and administrations have low expectations for academic achievement. Students frequently reported that many of their teachers expect little from them academically. Their teachers' low academic expectations are fueled by the same race, ethnic peers. Underrepresented in courses that prepare them for college. We're talking about the AP courses. Underrepresented in courses that would lead to STEM careers for the same reason. Low performance on the PSAE and college entrance. Parents' lack of involvement in their kids' education. And I think that's probably a concern of especially your counselors, your social workers. How many counselors, social workers here? Okay. And teachers, where you know this kid is at risk, getting back to our conference here, you know they're at risk, and many times you send notes to the parents, emails to the parents, letters to the parents, you don't get a response. And so many times you can become jaded, and many times you can say, well, the parents don't care. And I would venture to say that most parents do care. Now, it doesn't seem like it when you can't have that dialogue, but when you're poor and you're trying to work 2 jobs to keep a roof over your head, you know, coming to a PTA meeting or coming to any other kind of meeting proactively sometimes just isn't a practical thing to do. Where if you're living in a home with a mom and the dad's the breadwinner, and mom's making brownies and playing bridge, you got plenty of time to go and check on your kid while he is doing right, as opposed to waiting for a crisis. So sometimes the parents take a bad hit on that, but I know the importance of parental involvement. I know how important that is to have that parent involved in the curriculum, involved in discipline, involved in the teaching practices and the cultural environment of the school. So that's a big one. Students attend schools that lack staff diversity, and I mentioned that earlier. It is the students' belief that the mainstream Caucasian staff members do not have the knowledge and insights to help minority students overcome personal and school-related challenges they face on a daily basis. That's the kids' belief. That's their perception. And then even if it's not right, their perception is what? Their reality. And so that's where they operate from. Students don't feel they belong to the school culture. You know, one of the things I tell school superintendents and principals and counselors and a lot of the folks that I interact with and I do training is if you come to a school, myself, and I come and you say, Mr. Garlington, you are welcome here. You know, we are really glad to have you. We look forward to successful school years. That feels good. But then when I walk through the school, the first thing I see is the wall of fame. And I ain't up there. Then I see, other things and trophies, and I walk in a counselor's office and I see pictures and different things. But what I'm saying is that there's also a subliminal message that's not intended necessarily, but the subliminal message doesn't include a picture of Michael Jordan or somebody, Farrakhan or somebody. When I'm walking through the school, you saying I'm welcome, but I don't see nothing that helps me think, oh yeah, there's Michael Jordan, or there's Farrakhan, or there's, and not only that, the menu. Look at the menu for the whole week. You got tofu, whatever you call that. You got bean sprouts. You got knish, or whatever you call that. You got blintzes. But I don't see no smothered pork chops, some greens, and some sweet potatoes. I don't see that on the menu. So the fact that I don't see anything like that or fried chicken, I take it either way. I mean, again, it's a small thing, but when you see that, it doesn't speak to, they recognize, the kind of diets that I like. So it's important when you walk through your schools, I ask you to walk through your classrooms, walk through your school hallways, and see what the hallways tell you. See if the hallways or the classrooms or in the gym, see if the icons and the pictures and the illustrations, see if they say, hey, we recognize you. You're welcome here. Because if they don't, I don't think it's deliberate, but it's something you might not think about. So let's take that walk and just say, if I were Afro-American or if I were Latino, and I'm walking through, what would I think? How would I feel? Because it's something that you can change, and I know some schools do a fantastic job, but it's something that's not intentional, I don't think, but it's something maybe you can take back with you and just do that walk and say, wow, I see what that guy was talking about. I thought he was crazy at first, but he got a point. So, Afro-American students who transfer from Chicago public schools, that's a culture shock. I've done training in Chicago public schools and for teachers and administrators there, and what I found out, especially in the poverty sector, is that in the past 20 years, according to the Census Bureau, the percentage of change of poor families moving from Cook County and Chicago into DuPage County, the percentage of change is somewhere around 65%. That's a lot of folks moving in, okay? But despite that, over the last 20 years, when I went last summer to do an institute in Chicago public schools, and looking at the data, if I'm not mistaken, free or reduced lunch category, 80-something%, 85% of the students in public schools are free or reduced lunch. Yet in the last 20 years, you had that large number migrating to DuPage County. So again, that would be a culture shock. And I don't know, those of you who know anything about Ruby Payne's work, Framework for Understanding Poverty, and I do training in that as well, it's very startling because, again, if schools are middle class, which they're based on middle class norms and values, schools, businesses, they are, and I am poor and generationally poor, 4, 5, or 6 generations of poverty, then you as my teacher and me as a poor kid, we don't have a whole lot in common in terms of our cultures. But yet, no significant learning occurs without significant relationships. So it would behoove the teachers and the counselors and the superintendents to better understand, me in terms of being poor or in poverty, so that perhaps I can perceive them as authentic when they're trying to encourage me and motivate me, as opposed to just trying to earn a paycheck. But that's an obligation that as teachers and social workers and counselors, that based on our school demographics, we need to give some thought to. Because demographics is definitely changing, at least in DuPage County. I'm not sure about down this way as much. Okay, schools are culturally racist or biased. And again, you see the medium up there. That wasn't overwhelming. And I think that's good. Because I think there is some, obviously, I think there is some, but nowhere near the extent that where I can look at the academic achievement gap and say that's the reason. I don't buy that at all. Again, I think a lot of it has to do with culture and a lot of it has to do with mindset. Okay, so we have 10 minutes and I would like to do 2 things. I'd like to certainly open it to questions. I'd also like to give away a few Voices books. And so to do that, and the books are right back there unless somebody stole them. All right, I think they're still. Did anybody have a book? A couple folks borrowed a book. Did they put them back? I'm not trying to bust you out. I can see you nodding. See how cool I am? See how, and I see, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. You know who you are. So, what can I do? Let's say, can somebody give me, since you're middle class, a AAA card? You know, AAA. Somebody show me a AAA card. She's raising her hand like I believe her. Somebody show me a AAA card. Okay, so go ahead and get you a book right over there. Give this gentleman a hand. He had a AAA card. Okay. Can somebody show me a $20 bill? Or you credit card holders? I need to see it. Go ahead, young lady. Thank you very much. Give her a hand. You can go back and get your book. Now watch this. I bet you ain't nobody got this. Can somebody show me a bobby pin?
Oh, I got it.
Oh, go ahead, girl. Go get you a book. Now, see, I didn't think anybody had a book. That's a cultural thing. All right, what about, can somebody, how many books are back there? 4. Can somebody show me a jar of Mary's hair grease? Oh, ooh, Mary's hair grease. Come on, y'all know what, oh, I'm sorry, that was cultural. That was called, my bad. Mary's hair grease is that grease is so thick like axle grease, but it makes your hair good when it's bad. My bad. Well, man, why don't you just go get you a book? Okay? That's how that works. See? That's cultural too. All right. Okay, now I'm gonna show off. How many more books back there? Oh man, I want somebody to stand up and tell me what the word, let me show up a little bit. Inflagration. Stand up and tell me what inflagration means. Now I'm black and I'm talking white. Come on, inflagration. Inflagration. Okay, forget that, that's off the table. You're all making me seem like I'm really smart. That's dangerous. Let's try ichthyology. Ichthyology.
The study of like marine life or something.
That's close enough. Study of fish. Go get your book. Give her a hand. And I like showing off. I got one more book. I got to try that again. That felt pretty good. Somebody tell me what I said to this man. And don't you hit me. Hi, how are you?
Hi, pretty good.
What's your name?
Alex.
Alex, you are really a nefarious prevaricator.
No idea what that means.
Somebody tell me what that's not Spanish, that's English.
He's got bad intentions and he's trying to...
That's close, but no cigar. Nefarious prevaricator. Nefarious prevaricator. Some of y'all looking it up on your phone, shame on you. All right, let's go with this one. Come on, I'm trying to give a book away now. Let's see, nefarious prevaricator. Okay, tintinnabulation. Tintinnabulation. These are real words, folks. Y'all making me look really good. Tintinnabulation. What about moisture? Moisture, what does that mean?
Something is damp.
Yeah, here you go. Give this man a hand. You see, and I'm a social worker using those big words. How about that? And I'm Afro-American. Oh, boy.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. I could go on. I could go on.
Spell it for me.
Oh, I can.
I know you can.
Oh, you think you're smart? Okay, folks, real quick. No, real quick. I want you to say this word 3 times real quick and nice and loud, and then I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to say it real quick. Okay, here's the word. I want you to say this word 3 times real fast. Silk. What's a cow drink?
Water.
A cow does not drink milk. Boy. One more real quick. Yes. Yeah. Well, okay, one more quick, then we ask some questions. We got 5 minutes. Boy, oh boy. Huh? I don't know what she said.
You just talked about not being Donald Trump. You can't change it midstream now. She
What happened?
answered the question. She said baby eat cows, drink milk.
Yeah, but there's no award for that answer. So you're looking for that immediate gratification. And you're making my, see? What's half of 2 plus 2? What's half of 2 plus 2? No. No. It's 3. You know what? Y'all are awful suspect. These are educators?
I went to the school that you talked about.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any questions today? Any questions on the book Voices? Yes.
From Latin countries, their graduation rate is actually higher than second or third generation of the same family later on. So it can't be that the culture itself, in its purest form, could be downgrading their academic performance, because the ones who actually come in from those countries are doing just fine and do hold academics so high priority in their lives. I don't believe it's until their sons become, or their sons' sons become more Americanized in our culture here that becomes lower in the priority.
Okay. Okay, and I respect that. And again, I'm the messenger. I'm telling you what the kids said, but no, your point's well taken. Yes, ma'am.
We teach GED in Rockford, Illinois, so we teach the kids that have been usually kicked out of most high schools, are on probation and court ordered to GED, but we do teach a lot of the African American Hispanic population, and our Hispanic population, because a lot of parents that come here and own companies or work for companies, and again, our Hispanic population usually, not most of the time, but they go into the family business and feel again that even getting their high school equivalency diploma is not as important because their families own these businesses, they do enough to get by and keep it. So they do feel that finishing their education is not as important, even though we try to stress that it is, because if they want to do anything further than that, you know, a lot of companies do at least want your high school equivalency diploma at this point. But they do feel that working in a family business, because that's what everybody else does to get by, is enough.
Yeah. To bear out your point.
Does feel that.
To bear out your point, how many of you seen Stand and Deliver? Stand and Deliver, okay? And the Stand and Deliver, the movie where the professor and his wife come to the restaurant, and the professor feels this daughter has really great potential, and basically, in a very kind of perhaps rough way, chides the father for not supporting his daughter going to college, because she could be top kid, he says. But again, he says, I worked in this restaurant for a nickel a day, and now I own the place. And now you're going to tell me, you know, how to raise my daughter. She goes to college, she'll probably get pregnant. So there was, based on what you're saying, that was an example I sometimes use where that family tie is greater. And of course, the woman who co-wrote the book, her name is Lourdes Ferrer. She had a real problem because her youngest daughter, the other daughters and sons all graduated college in Florida and went to live right in the same neighborhood because mom's there. But the youngest daughter, more acculturated, decided to go to New York and have a scholarship for architecture at Union. I think it's Union. I forgot the name of the college. I think it's Union. And the mother had a real problem with that. Went over to the school, ready to, you know, cuss everybody out because where'd you put that in my daughter's head that she's going all the way to New York? But when they explained to her that, like they said in the movie, I'm trying to do what's best for Anna. That's what the wife of the professor trying to explain to the daughter. Well, the school said the same thing to Lourdes Ferrer. She's a Puerto Rican. We're trying to do what's best for your daughter. And she went, and she did get her degree. Cooper Union was the name of the college in New York. But it was a real struggle for that mom to break that norm where the kids graduate and move away from home. Okay? Where in African American, you can't wait for them to graduate to move away from home. Just different culture. Any other questions? Yes.
You brought up a great point when you discussed if you don't look like me, it's hard for me to learn from you. And I noticed that a lot of our students, primarily the African American students, have a hard time with connecting with some of the teachers as well. And I've also heard some school staff refer to them as the black students. So what type of advice would you give to school administrators on how to build those relationships? I know sometimes we talk about relationship building, but what are some of the tips and what are some of the things that you would suggest in order to build that relationship?
Okay. Well, I would invite me over and hire me. Oh yeah. As a what I call cultural competence is the umbrella that I would utilize to help understand the differences, the nuances, if you will, in the cultures, and do some role playing and help folks to feel more comfortable. A lot of times we have this guilt thing, and it's not about guilt, folks. It's not about guilt anymore, but it is about being culturally competent. And now they're talking about culturally competent curriculum, cultural competent this, cultural competent that, and that goes both ways. It's not a one-way street. So if I don't care anything about time and I'm late all the time because in my culture, CP time is what's happening, okay? Well, that's not going to get it because I'm not going to be successful in America if I can get to all my appointments when I feel like it. I'm going to miss a lot of planes too. So from a cultural standpoint, I have to realize that in America, mainstream America, status quo, if you will, time is money. Time matters. And so I have to shift that belief and be on time. But at the same time, you have to understand that if I code switch, because I don't want you to understand what I'm saying, I'm not trying to put you down, I'm not even talking about you, and also if I come in there acting ugly, like with our swag, you know what swag is, okay, that you have to realize that, wait a minute, I'm not going to be intimidated by that false veneer you putting out to make me back up. You have to stand your ground and say, to the mother or the father, whoever it is, and they will respect that, because the next thing that comes out of their mouth is, hey man, you all right, man, you all right. What that means is I couldn't pull that over you. I couldn't use my finesse and my mean mug to make you back up as the authority. But you have to feel comfortable doing that because it's the right thing to do. But that comes from being culturally competent too. Yes, ma'am.
I think that translates differently depending on the gender. As a male, you may be able to stand your ground against like even a female or a male, but if a female comes out that way, then it could, I think, sometimes escalate the situation because of maybe the posture or what have you. I don't know. That's my initial thought.
No, that's good, because cultural competence would say to you one size doesn't fit all. So if you're a female, then you have to adjust that. You have to either tone it down or create more space, or say, sister girl, look at him. And oh, look at him. What did I just say, look at him? What does that mean? Yeah, see? So, sister girl, look at him. You call me sister girl, all of a sudden, oh man, where you get that from? Where you live? Where you be at? Where you be living? But again, it's that relationship thing. So a lot of times I might do that. I know that's not so-called good English, but if that can get that parent to realize that, yeah, just because I have a shirt and tie on, wear Movado watch, I'm still down with it, because I'm trying to help your boy. Oh, okay, you cool. Which basically means, oh, I can accept you where you are, as opposed to I'm the authority and you don't understand and I sold out because of where I am. And we got one more minute, 2 questions.
So how does a white teacher, female teacher, relate to a sister girl or what have you? She can say, look again. I mean, then they be like, oh, so now you making fun of me?
That's a good question. And let me tell you, that's a good question. And let me tell you my answer. The best thing I can advise you to do is be yourself. If you are corny, be corny. Because they can respect that. But if you start changing up, like what's that movie with Richard Pryor that was in jail with a white comedian? Who? Yeah, Gene Wilder. Oh my goodness. Gene Wilder's in jail trying to be hip. Please, Gene Wilder, just walk like you normally do. You'll be all right. But when you're trying to be hip, people looking at you because it doesn't match. It's a mixed message. It's called meta-communication. Be yourself. People know when they're right and wrong. People know what your job is. But if you apologize for doing the right thing, you've given up your authority. So if you're scared, then be scared, but do the right thing while you're scared. Okay? Don't change up because you're giving away your authority. Don't show the fear, yeah. Because that's funny, Gene Wilder or something. But it makes the case. Okay, I'm going to have to stop because I have a time commitment. Again, give yourselves a hand. You did a great job. If you have a moment, you might want to read some of these quotes before you leave. But if you fill out your evaluations, move them down to the corner. I'll grab them a little bit later, and I'll see some of you in about 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
I thought the session was really good, shared a lot of good information that I can actually take back and use at my college.
Well, I thought the presentation was very informative. I liked the part when he mentioned that in the schools that the African Americans and Hispanics and whatever other ethnicities, they need to have you know, things in the school that represent what they look like. And as far as the school menu, I never thought about that even when I was in school, the school menu was geared, you know, mainly towards, you know, people who were not eating the same items that I ate at home. So, you know, I thought those were very good points to, you know, bring out.
I loved his presentation for many of the same reasons. He gave a lot of ideas of what schools could do that wouldn't cost really any money, but little things that could make a big impact on minority youth, like the Latinos, the African Americans, simple things that we could take back with us and use in our schools. I think that's really important. I would love to see him or someone like him come and speak to our students. I think he'd make an amazing impact on our children.
Yes.